working on trying to find solutions, going to the cities, talking to people. You know, last year we spent quite a bit of time at the legislature working with them, trying to, you know, I didn't quantify those amounts, but we haven't had any direct payouts. We've just had a lot of time spent trying to find a solution.
And clarify for me a little bit of the reason for the failure.
The two stumbling blocks seem to be, one, we needed to have $600,000 of cash here on this end, which seemed, you know, for lack of better terms, to be a surprise to many here in the community after it was granted. And so the fine print, of course, showed that, and the states argued that, you know, every grant we give has a match, and that's just normal. Now, there's a lot of other people that would argue differently, but that was the take on it. And so we needed to find $600,000 somewhere locally here to match that $600,000. And then there was another, even when we thought we may have found the money, the other issue became the concept of public purpose. And, you know, it's one of those things that lawyers like to argue or something, because, I mean, we were at the Attorney General's office and talking about public purpose, and they just have a way of looking at it that wasn't really the way that we were looking at public purpose. And obviously they rose to a higher standard, they thought, and we couldn't reach that standard. So they kept, for lack of anything else, I guess they kept saying, no, that doesn't rise to public purpose. And until you got them to say yes, it was like kicking yourself, because every time you think you had a public purpose that you could stick in there and hang with, they'd find some way to dislodge it, and then you'd be back to that. And then if you started to make progress on that, then they'd say, oh, by the way, did you get your $600,000? And of course, that was probably the tougher part, really, for us. And I know there were those who hoped we could argue that, well, you know, the flood came, you should just give it to us without a match. No, that just didn't materialize.
What's the council's pleasure?
Well, this is a request from the Institute of Nanotechnology, and I would see how we would not move to send a letter to the state. Reluctantly.
Yes.
Second.
You got a motion?
Yeah, that we send a letter to the state.
Second by Mr. Thompson. Any more need to discuss?
Just so that it's clear that in everybody's mind, the city is the recipient of the dollars. So if it is ours to discharge back, and as Mr. Rowderton notes, working with Rentech is extremely important to us, and the fact that they have conceded with us that this is time to send it back and get on with other things. And there are other grants that we've identified, that other pockets of money that would be much more likely to result in something good, and we'll continue to work with them on those things.
All right then. So, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion passes. Let's move on to 8C, consideration of adopting resolution number 2010-005, authorizing the city's application for grant funding under the Federal Recreational Trail Program as matching support for the recently awarded Minnesota Legacy Trail Grant. Ms. Christina Peterson of Yankee Colby will be present to present a brief synopsis.
Do you want to say anything first? Or?
Well, I'll introduce you. Christina is the professional engineer from Yankee Colby that we've been working with on trail issues, and she was the one who had the foresight to write a successful grant to the Legacy funds. And then she also identified a possible another matching amount that we could use to help offset our costs, which at times would help us overcome LGA cuts. So, Christina, please.
Yeah, I'll just give a quick overview of the DNR grant programs. Traditionally, there's three programs for trails, and that's the Local Trails Connection, grant, the regional trails, and this federal grant program. Even though it says federal, it is administered through the Minnesota DNR. So those three programs have been in place for years, and they're a 50% match for communities. This past year, and what you've already been awarded, the Legacy Trails grant, that was something new. And the nice thing about that was it was 75% funded, and so the city was only looking at 25% match for that. And the other nice thing about that is it's a little different than the traditional programs, so they allow you to match it up with the traditional programs to possibly fund the entire project. And so that's what we're shooting for now. At the end of this week is the deadline for this Federal Trails application. I think you have a draft copy of the application in your packet. I'll also have, we have letters of support from several organizations and people to go with that, and some maps, some other maps other than the one you have, some other information. So I guess I'm looking for your approval to go ahead and submit that application. And if you have any other questions about the program or about the project specifically, feel free to ask any questions.
This is for phase one.
Yes, phase one, which is in the red. And just to give you an idea on the amount that's available for this particular year for this funding, there's $2 million available, and this Federal Trails Recreation Grant can also fund motorized projects, so they kind of split it up. There's some projects for mountain bike trails, some for ATV trails, and then some just for traditional trails. So it is a competitive grant. I will say that it's pretty competitive, but they urge people to try to match the legacy funds and the federal grant funds that we're applying for now. So I think that shows that they are excited to help people complete a project that they have planned. So this would help you finish it at low cost. And you find out in June is when the grant awards will be announced for this particular program.
I'll make the motion that we approve this application.
I'll second it.
Motion, we have a second. Any need to discuss further? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And it passes. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now get it.
I don't have control over that part, sorry.